MSMEs have always found it difficult to raise funds. According to an IFC report, the total addressable credit gap in the MSME sector is estimated at about rupees 25.8 trillion rupees, close to around 400 billion. And what is more worrying is that despite various government schemes, this gap has only widened over the years. Micro and small enterprises together account for over 95% of the viable debt gap that can be addressed by financial institutions in the near term, says that report. How can we enable greater access to finance for MSMEs? To talk about this and more, we have with us today Aishwarya Ravi, CFO, Kinara Capital, Saurav Sharma, Head Trade and Working Capital, International Private Bank, Deutsche Bank India. He's also one of our partners for the top MSMEs ranking. Rajiv Podar, Chairman, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Sudeep Sural, CEO, CARE Advisory Research and Training Limited. CARE is our assessment partner for top MSMEs ranking. So let me come to you, Rajiv. First of all, since you represent the industry, what is the current funding climate like? The government has announced schemes like ECLGS during the pandemic. Did it help?
Thanks, Pran, for setting the context in place. Yes, if you're talking about various schemes which are put by the government, well, the most favorite and important one was ECLGS. Now, interestingly, ECLGS is the emergency credit line guarantee scheme, which has been taken different versions going up to version 4. And interestingly, we did a study on this. And although it's now expanded to 4.5 lakh crores, only about 2.8 lakh crores was sanctioned, sanctioned as on 3rd July, and only 2.1 lakh crores were dispersed. It affected about 110 odd lakh accounts. The good thing was that it's an easy scheme which helped the MSMEs. The major disbursement was on the retail trade. 45% of the amount went to the retail trade, about 21% to the service sector, and about 34% to the manufacturing sector. And it was mainly used to repay debt and restart the activities. Now, the government, realizing this, has been very proactive, and they have actually put in place, they realized that the service sector needs more of the money because they were badly impacted. And so in the last, announcement, they actually took in the service sector, some of the service sectors like medical, hospitals, clinics, aviation, etc., and included them in this scheme, which was a very positive move. But what needs to be done on this scheme, as per us, is that about 69% of the MSME sector is in the service sector, and out of that, most of them are in the contact-intensive services. Now, for the contact-intensive services, the disbursement hardly been about 4,000 crores. And that is the most impacted sector. So I think if this can be more emphasized and worked on, this is an excellent scheme. The other two announcements which I would like to briefly touch on is the subordinate debt scheme, which was about 20,000 crores for stressed MSMEs. This hardly took off. There's only, I have the figures of March 21. There was only about 38.5 crores out of the 20,000 crores, impacting only 332 beneficiaries. So there's a lot of scope to grow that scheme. It's a good scheme. There are some hindrances regarding guarantee, regarding collaterals, which need to be removed. And finally, I would like to touch upon the Fund of Fund, which was an excellent program of 50,000 crores, which was announced, but it's yet to be fully implemented. So I would suggest that these three are important schemes which should be looked into.
Saurav, if I can come to you, you represent a bank. So at the outset, how important is the SME sector for your bank, and what are the kind of products that you have for the sector?
So first of all, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks, Pran, for having me over. And I really enjoyed your sessions in the past, and I'm glad to be here. Okay. So just from Deutsche Bank perspective, globally, Deutsche Bank has always been an MSME bank, right? Right from the inception, we've always worked very, very closely with the MSMEs. It is a part of our DNA, right? So MSME. MSME is a central pillar for DB Retail Bank India franchise, and all our businesses revolve around this pillar. Today, as of today, we have 60% of our retail bank lending in MSME sector. And you'd be surprised to know, because very few people know this, or they think that DB is not really a part of the micro segment. 8% of our total retail bank portfolio is in micro segment, which are the upcoming businesses and which will fuel the future growth story of India. So we are extremely committed, and we are expecting to be a part of this India growth journey. I like to call it journey, not a story, because stories are fantasized. Journeys are defined. Only difference is it's a question of when, right? Not if. So this is the India growth journey, and we would like to participate. And we expect to double our portfolio in the MSME over the next 3 to 5 years. That's the ambition that we have. So, so we're pretty much committed to the segment.
Wonderful. If I can come to you, similar question to what I asked Rajiv about. What do you think is the current, lending ecosystem like at the moment in the country?
Yeah, so I think you very rightly pointed out that there is a significant credit gap. You mentioned a figure of 25 trillion or 25 lakh crore, but I guess that figure would probably be higher if you consider the entire ecosystem at large. So if you were to just break it into pieces, let's take it one by one. Let's start with the micro segment first. In the micro segment, the issues really are that these are enterprises or single person enterprises which are up to 5 crores of turnover. So indeed very, very small enterprises, and they for the lack of a collateral really rely on the informal sources of funds. And by informal sources of funds, I mean money lenders, local money lenders, friends, relatives, etc., where obviously the rates of interest are very high. Therefore, the credit gap here is substantial. But when you look at the small segment, the credit gap accounted for by the small segment is even more, because the small segment, which is 50 crores of turnover, they don't prefer the informal sources of financing, unlike the micro segment. They would prefer more formal sources of financing, and there, I think the biggest challenge really is that the larger enterprises, to which the smaller segment forms a sort of a supply chain, they typically delay payments. And we've seen that happening over the past year or so in the pandemic, where not just that the demand went down, but the delay, because of the delayed payments, a lot of credit gap emerged. And when you look at it in totality, the trend that you get is that in the states where the presence of banking is relatively on the lower side, banking penetration is low, those are the states where the credit gap typically tends to be on the higher side. And so obviously, for this to be addressed, the government is trying its best, but the government schemes are more catering towards enabling financial institutions and banks to refinance. The government is not lending directly, right? So obviously, that is a good thing to happen, but you also need to have an ecosystem where digital lending takes its roots and replaces the traditional bank lending, which is more collateral lending to a very large extent. When that happens, I think this credit gap will reduce.
I'm sure sort of will not like that, but but Ashara, coming to you, like Sudeep mentioned, that digital lending and fintech has a lot riding on it. So, what is it that Kinara Capital is doing in the space of MSME lending? What has been your impact like?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Pran, for having me here. And I'm so glad Sudeep ji mentioned a lot of things, what exactly we try to, focus on to counter. Kinara is an NBFC which focuses on the last mile distribution, essentially providing collateral-free loans to the MSMEs. So as you said, the credit gap is huge, more than $400 billion or so. And we exactly try to focus on how to, close that gap, at least a tiny little bit at a time. So what we do is we try to do cash flow based assessment and hence try and give fast and flexible loans to these small time borrowers who traditionally, because of the different banking channels and all the aspects along with it, are not able to get access. Frankly, they go to the money lenders. In fact, 40% of all of MSMEs go to money lenders where the rates are like really varied. And we are trying to bridge the gap for these borrowers so that they can also be brought into the fold of formalized financial institution. Most of them are new to credit. They don't have any credit history. And mostly because of that, any borrowings for them from the traditional channels are sort of closed, right? And that's where financials like us, Kinara Capital, we come in. We try to give them that first or the second or the third loan, which takes their business to the next level and sort of, gets them on into the high growth journey, which they are potentially capable of, but are denied. How did the pandemic impact us? As I was saying, we are present in 6 states and we are having multiple sectors under us, a cross section of sectors and diversified to the hilt. And I know that's something which all NBFCs work towards, but the pandemic has affected us equally along all of these sectors, all of the geographies, because it did not spare anybody in the world, right? Having said that, what quickly we saw that there was a big distinction in terms of essential and non-essential services, like these essential services for medical related or PPE equipment manufacturers or the mask kits manufacturers. All of these guys were still running. They were still, able to produce and they could still sustain despite the lockdowns, despite the slowing down the economy and the supply chain, disruptions. But the non-essential services, some sectors like fashion probably, and service sectors like your hotels, etc., did take a definite beating. So it was sort of a mixed impact. Some sectors like automobile, etc., wave 1 impacted them, but then they rebounded beautifully. But again, after wave 2, things are still, being decided on how the course is going to determine their journey, right? So there was a lot of impact, divisible impact, but at the end of the day, schemes from the government like the ECLGS, what you all talked about, did help to sustain these customers and at least give them the much needed short-term capital, which sort of bolstered their confidence and, took them along the curve, right?
Right. Aishwarya, what's the ticket size normally that you guys?
So our ticket size is about 3.5 lakhs average ticket size. So a typical small time entrepreneur would be about 40 to 60 odd lakhs of turnover per annum. So that's the target segment we focus on. And probably they are in the manufacturing, trading, or the services space. And in the typically the 4th or 5th level of the supply chain. So these are the bottom level guys who then deliver to the bigger sort of transactional elements.
Right. Rajiv, if we can come to you, beyond the pandemic, what are the problems that MSMEs face in the country when it comes to funding?
Yeah, so Pran, we've got to realize that the recovery of the MSMEs is, if I may say, it's K-shaped. Whereas the larger MSMEs who are doing well, or those who are exporting or large supplies to large companies, they are doing very well. But when it comes to the micro, which constitutes a major part of the MSMEs, they are hugely suffering. And the reason is because they are not yet part of they do not have proper record keeping, they are not part of the GST networks, they don't have lack of documentation, lack of financial intelligence, if I may say so. So it's very difficult for people to assess their credit worthiness. And I think this is a major challenge. So, as there was a talk going on that, they have to go to beyond the formal sector. And anything beyond the formal sector has to be more expensive. So, whether it's going to a money lender or it's going to anybody else, as a matter of fact, but it's going to be beyond the cost. So that's the biggest challenge I see, is how to get them into proper documentation where risk can be assessed. And that constitutes a major part of the 63.4 or whatever million SMEs we have.
Right. Saurabh, very interested to know more about the micro lending that you do. How is it that you guys are making the decision when it comes to micro borrowers? And, I've heard from 3 speakers the word money lender. One browse that borrowers sometimes have against bankers is that, you make it very difficult for them to get a loan from bank. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. So actually, I completely agree with Mr. Poddar and Mr. Ravi that it's very difficult for the micro segment, especially those on the 5th or the 6th, sixth level of the supply chain, and various reasons that, as Mr. Sural also pointed out and Mr. Poddar also pointed out. So for us, we have various products. One of the products that we have is unsecured lending up to 50 lakhs that we do to micro segment, and frankly, most of them would fit in. I would not say that our segment would be what would be for Kinara because we are probably not there in those geographies. But yes, we certainly are there for startups and entrepreneurs, which are on the second, maybe third level or fourth level of the chain of supply chain level. Plus, we also partner with quasi-government agencies like CGTSME, NCGTC to provide loans which are guarantee backed. So that helps us to that increases the risk appetite that we have. So overall, we are focusing, and we are in a direct model. Deutsche Bank, we directly go to the consumer. We are not in a model of the book or buying the PSL book or the micro segment book from outside. We generate this 8% is that we have, that I was talking about, is our own segment. We have our own direct reach to them. And the assessment is primarily basis on the cash flows, for sure. We do look at credit histories because of the risk appetites are relatively lower at a banks, and because of maintaining certain ratios. And so we do look at all those, but then it's more judgmental in terms of industry based, and it's a conscious decision because these are the ones who actually grow, and we have seen traditionally they grow into becoming small enterprises and medium enterprises, and they are a part of our chain of products, right? From unsecured to term loans to working capital and so on and so forth. So that's this thing. But we've had a fairly good experience in this segment, and we feel that the segment has really performed well for us. Of course, in this pandemic, everyone is it, but that we consider as a black swan event. We don't think that that's something which is going to remain for long.
Right, but it doesn't change your outlook towards a specific sector, for example, say a restaurant?
Yes, it does. So what we have been in the last 1.5 years have been assessing. We've changed the way we assess. Where, for example, if we were looking at financials for a year or 2 years now, or a projection for a year, now we have started looking at projections for 2 years and 3 years, and taking decisions based on what are the models, what are the businesses which will bounce back. And honestly, we had a very detailed discussion once, and I was unable to figure out which segments will not bounce back in 3 years, right? So that was a very tough decision and discussion. Honestly, I couldn't figure out. I thought everything will more or less bounce back, and of course, in a different way, maybe in a digital form or a different form. It's just that, but the business will remain there. Restaurants, for one, I don't see any issues going forward. It's just a question of biding this time, and this is the time we need to step up all the banks and the financial institutions to support them. And as long as the restaurant owner's head is on the right, on their shoulders, we should just be supporting, and we think it'll bounce back for sure.
Right. How difficult is it to rate rank an MSME, and how has this changed with the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think, the difficulty is really arising because of non-availability of the right kind of information, right? So now the reason for that is actually twofold. It is on account of the lack of awareness on the part of MSMEs, like Mr. Poddar was mentioning, on the need for proper documentation, proper bookkeeping systems, right? And therefore, when such information is not available, the easy thing that lenders do is to replace or try to address that with a higher collateral requirement, right? So I think the difficulty is stemming not only from that. The difficulty is also stemming from the fact that there are a number of cash transactions. When you have a number of cash transactions and you don't have a bookkeeping system, what you get is a loan amount that actually is on the lower side, and therefore you are driven to informal sources to borrow. And when you have a lower capital base, your leverage really goes for a toss, right? So lack of information is really the difficulty. Now, when we look at just juxtapose this with what happened in the last year and a half, obviously on top of the lack of information, you have various segments getting impacted differently because of COVID, right? So, there were some segments that are completely unimpacted if they are a part of, let's say, essential services. Some of them are impacted more, whether it is, tourism related, travel related, hotels, aviation related, the supply chains to all these sectors. And therefore, in the light of all this, and of course, you have the added complication of the varying impacts of the pandemic on various geographies, areas which are, which were more, which had to undergo more frequent lockdowns, for example, or more protracted lockdowns, for example. So the challenge really is that when we sit down to assess when will normalcy of operations return, because obviously cash flow prediction becomes very important. And recently, I think there was a study as to what are the factors which are impacting MSMEs, and I think the biggest challenge really was the liquidity, followed by demand. When will demand come back? When will fresh orders come back? The logistics related challenges, the manpower related challenges, right? So when you put all this together in a credit appraisal model, it becomes difficult to assess the return to normalcy. Obviously, when we project it, let's say for the longer term is good, but the shorter term is beset with a lot of issues, a lot of challenges.
Right. Ashwara, shorter term, like you said, has a lot of problems associated with it. How is it that you guys normally carry out your lending decisions? What is it that you look at? And has that changed with the pandemic now?
So we've done about 2,000 crores of disbursement historically, and to about 50,000 odd borrowers in totality. We've been in business for the last 10 years, and I can definitely say that the assessment techniques have changed quite a lot over time, and especially over the last 1 year, because whatever probability models, whatever assessment logics you've built, it's I don't think so anybody built it to sort of weather black swan events every other year, which is what we've been sort of having. And black swan events 2 years continuously with this pandemic, and all the things which happened before, including demonetizations, GSTs, etc. every single thing impacted the MSMEs who are our target customers. So obviously there's been a lot of change in how our credit underwriting has worked. We were always technology based. We were driven by technology in terms of how to underwrite our customers. And I think we used to do decisions like in about 5 odd days before pandemic. And I think after pandemic, we moved down to so much so that we can give decisions in like about 24 odd hours, right? And this is a segment we're talking about who may not have all of the documents in all proper, realities, because these are the small time entrepreneurs. So we've figured out ways on how to assess their income, how to use cash flows and other proxy indicators along with all the economic indicators you see out there to sort of build our own logic based underwriting engine, which then gives us confidence that these sort of customers are also good to bring into the fold of our financing channels, right? Now, have we changed significantly in terms of whom we give loans to post-pandemic? Yes and no, right? Our logics, our underwriting has sort of been tightened. We've obviously being more cautious about whom to lend to, considering the overall economic situation. But having said that, it's more about taking cues from how the pandemic is affecting different businesses. Like, for example, right now, if a business is not going to be sustainable in a pandemic condition, obviously then we'll not be giving loans to them. Vis-a-vis earlier, we might have, given exposure to these guys, right? So a lot of these things are more like nonverbal cues because of the pandemic. But having said that, in terms of underwriting engine, etc., I think it's becoming stronger. And that way, we feel confident to broaden our reach and to bring more sort of entrepreneurs into the formal financing chain.
Right. Raji, if you have to talk to the bankers and tell them, these are the what advice would you give them actually?
You
When it comes
asking me
to
this with
lend to
Sharmaji
MSME.
sitting here is a very difficult question. But the sector is pretty regulated. I mean, the banks have generally very limited flexibility on term. But there are a few things which I think as a bank, if I was to talk to a banker, as you said, I would say, the banker should have a more service provider approach than, a product seller expert. It's my thought. They should more to be more calm, more educated, to educate the lender to the person, who borrower, because that's very important. Then I think the bank should spend a little bit more money on this, or it could be the CSR money to provide financial literacy. That's very important. I think, especially as we talked on the micro sector, that's really suffering, and they don't have the knowledge. So if something could be done on the CSR side or any kind of spending. And third is, and it need not be for Deutsche Bank, but for most of the bankers, there's a bank risk aversion to any default. What we find is that they don't want to take a risk at all. So what they do is take a prime security, and they like to, as a collateral, as he was rightly saying, this is far greater than what the lending amount is. And then they'll, on top of it, they'll ask for your house security, or they'll ask for your personal guarantees, etc., etc. It makes it very difficult for the. So I think these are three things which I would request a banker to consider. Given I do understand that they can't afford to lose the money also, but these are few things which I think I would advise.
Saurabh, to be fair to you, I think I have to ask you the question that what are the kind of problems that a banker faces when it comes to a borrower, especially a MSME borrower?
So actually, despite how much I would like to say, I don't agree with Mr. Poddar. I think I agree with every single thing that he said. Everything that I think Mr. Ravi was also mentioning, those are also true. These are challenges that are there in the system. As a lender, and I think Mr. Suril had covered it in the beginning. So primarily, there were as a lender, the basic challenges that we see to an MSME segment, and as we go down the chain, we see the lack of transparency. Now, lack of transparency is could be accounting related, it could be turnover related, it could be related to various other things, stocks or anything. Also, the data available on the business update is also how the business is also not readily available, right? As of yesterday, right? Why I say yesterday, because a lot of work is happening on this thing. And the other thing that we see, again, lack of collateral, as you rightly said, lack of credit history, a lack of, and all this, adds to credibility, right? And if the credibility is not, unable to establish, then the risk-taking ability kind of goes down. Right? So that is some of the challenges that we face. Though there are a lot of things which are changing over the last couple of years very fast. But yes, these are some challenges which I think will still remain till such time we are more entrenched into digital. Advanced bureaus have more information, which are growing drastically. The bureaus are becoming very strong with the information, as Mr. Sural would agree. And the data, the kind of data they're throwing at us is pretty good, and that helps the overall decision-making process. Yeah.
So Sandeep, the profile of a borrower is, the most important thing when arriving at a lending decision. With technology that we have around us and the data that we now have, how can this process be strengthened? How do we make Aishwarya and Saurav's life easier?
Yeah, so I think the good news is that, the emerging market experience in using technology or fintech lending, as it is called, has been pretty good. So if you look at countries like Philippines, countries like Mexico, you look at some of the large Chinese companies, companies like Ant Financials, Tencent, it's been by and large a good experience. And I think the reason really is that, now, using cutting edge technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you can really harness data and ensure a very accurate sort of credit risk profiling. And when you do that, I think the advantage really is that instead of offering products which are very rigid, right, which are very straight-jacketed, you can actually customize products based on the true nature of the underlying business, right? And so you can use various kinds of non-financial data. You can zero in on the usage patterns and create products based on the payment capacity. So essentially moving away from collateral-based lending to a cash flow predictive approach, right? So what are the kinds of data that you can use? You can use private data, public data. You can actually use surrogate data. For instance, you can use data on utility usage. You can use social media data. You can use data on asset, hypothecations or encumbrances, for example, right? And that is really the way to go, if you ask me, because when you compare this, it compares very starkly with a loan against property approach, right? It compares very starkly with a loan against collateral approach. And as Aishwarya was saying, the credit appraisal cycle is much more shorter in duration. It becomes a sector-specific approach. And the value proposition changes to an in-principle approval, like what Aishwarya was saying, within hours, if not days, right? So once you do that, the other thing where technology can also be used is on the operation side. So you can use technology for collections. You can have early warning signals. You can have a geotagging of customers. If you want to keep a tab on where your asset is or where your machinery and equipment is, you can use IoT sensors, right, to secure your assets. And this can be done over various sorts of business models. It can be done over a sort of a supply chain model. It can be done over a P2P lending model. It can be done using, invoice lending. So you have this initial cash flow based approach, and then you back it up uh, with collateral wherever it is required. It's not necessary that it will always be required, and that's how you can actually move away into a tech-enabled lending, which is based on cash flow profiling.
Right. Aishwarya, so tech-enabled lending or fintech is supposed to be a great leveler. Do you think fintech has the wherewithal to bridge or maybe, bridge part of the funding gap that we have with products like Sudeep said, customized products for small borrowers?
I think absolutely. Tech is the way forward. And if anything, the pandemic has definitely taught us all that we need to have a more fast way of reaching the last mile customers, and not just by personal visits, right? We need to have an alternate approach. And I think all of this talk on technology has just been fast forwarded. Uh, Maybe it would have happened like 5 years down the line, but I think all of it is happening right now because the pandemic has sort of pushed us to think on all of those lines. And I think Sudeepji mentioned it correctly that it's not just about the cash flow based approach. It's also about how you can engage with the customer in a sort of array of services. Could be, invoice based discounting, could be a POS based lending. So all of these new age products are coming up, are being thought through. Even we are offering some of them. And all this shows is that the customer has that much more opportunities to have a differentiated instrument for him, for his uses, and however the way he wants to use it. Because what's happened, I think, at least in the last couple of years, a customer who never used to even go onto internet is now completely engaged and hooked onto the internet. The internet usage in the last 1 year at least has just reached all corners of at least rural India also, which means the ability for a customer to have a customer journey online through internet has significantly improved, which means he is that much more approachable. He has that much more other assessment factors like your utility bills or media profiling, etc. All of those things are now possible for a hitherto customer whom you could not reach through any other means except personal contact, which means we now have the ability to sort of engage with all of them in million different ways, right? A bouquet of differentiated products. Lending could be something non-lending as well, because financial services arm, when you have that infrastructure built to reach out to the customers, then it's just that supply chain, you can use the same arm to do different things, right? Which means the customer becomes more able to reach out to the different institutions and sort of get all the services at one single stop, so to speak, right? So I think definitely technology has the power to change how we do lending of today. Currently, still, I think lending is a so many zillion years business. It has its own rules, but I think all of the rules are getting broken. It's at least being thought through differently, and we definitely are trying to break all those boundaries and rules so that we can simply bring in more. I think 65 million enterprises of MSMEs. At least, the goal is to bring 50-60% of them formalized in the next couple of years. That'll be great, right?
Rajiv, from an industry point of view, would you pin your hopes on fintech or even, technology-enabled lending? Look at it. You have something like Tread, which is not fintech in nature, but around technology, that isn't doing too well.
No, but as Suralji and Aishwarya said also, I fully agree with what they are saying. Technology is where the future is. And you're going to have many banks without branches. That's the way it's going to move in the future. We just had a very interesting seminar on this, and the take was that technology is the only way forward. But coming to the fintech players, I think doing the KYCs, getting everything in place, and getting information is all yes possible. But when it comes to taking collaterals, the challenge will be to actually have physical collaterals done and the valuation and round collateralization. That may be an issue. It may get solved in the future, but as of today, when we are talking, that could be an issue because either the fintechs may not have the bandwidth or it may be a time consuming issue, which even the banks would take otherwise. So I do think and I fully support what they are saying. Fintech players are here to stay, and as Surelji said, internet abroad also they played a major role. So they'll continue to do that. And I think that's the way forward.
Sort of. Reserve Bank is also pushing for models like co-lending between banks and NBFCs for the priority sector. Can this model make a difference?
Okay, so first I just wanted to add on to something what Mr. Ravi was saying and Mr. Poddar was also corroborating is about technology, right? And technology being the way forward. So personally, I feel definitely technology is what is going to make the difference. But it's not going to be either or. It's going to be a marriage of some of these and to use the best strengths of platforms. What we are going to see increasingly, there is a dramatic paradigm shift in the way MSMEs are going to do business, the way they have started looking at it. India entrepreneur being very, very resilient, very tough and, adaptable to the changing environment. What this pandemic has done is made them more open to accept technology. The one challenge is, of course, availability of credit, which has been the issue. The other challenge is acceptability or of technology, right? They're not ready to move on to technology, right? So that is something which we will need to expedite, which has its own role. Over a period of time, NBFCs, fintechs and banks will coexist, and they have to bring best of the models to work in for the growth of the sector. So that comes to my co-lending point, what you had just asked. Like quite other schemes, the Reserve Bank has launched this scheme, and I think in all its wisdom, it looks very, very attractive and a game changer, at least over a period of time. What it does is, for NBFCs, NBFCs have a certain strength, and certain NBFCs have developed the strength of assessing, for example, like Mr. Ravi was saying about Kinara. So they have developed certain strengths in assessing certain types of businesses and entrepreneurs, which a bank does not have, right? Because we don't have that reach, which the geographical reach that they have, that we don't have. And as Mr. Sunil said, we are also challenged by certain, or restricted by certain regulations. So that is something that they bring on table, NBFC brings on table. And but what NBFC misses out is on deposits, right? Now, deposit is something which the banks bring on table, right? And banks, while bring deposit on table, they don't have the in-depth information or knowledge of lending to certain segments. While no matter how much we would want to be there, but we don't have the expertise. Here, there is going to be a marriage of two, and the two will come together. And I certainly see that this model should make a difference. How much difference will it make will obviously depend on the execution of the model at the ground level and the tie-ups. The intent looks good, right? But intent has to be executed, right? So that is how I look at it. But it looks like a pretty attractive option.
There clearly exists an information asymmetry. Can something like a public credit registry help here?
So sorry, can you repeat that? I missed that.
That's possible.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so I think, before I come to the public credit registry, just a couple of, thoughts on this co-lending model. See, the co-lending model was allowed by RBI some time back. But, the success has really been mixed, and the success has been mostly, in direct assignment transactions. That is, after the portfolio is created, the NBFC goes and gets it refinanced from a bank. the co-lending success has been elusive in origination transactions, right? So I think the big challenge is how do you ensure that there is alignment of the credit decision-making process and the credit risk appetite between the NBFC and the bank. I think that is the big challenge. And as Saurabh rightly points out, both banks and NBFCs bring very, very complementary skill sets to the table. The NBFCs have got reach, so you go to the tier 3 cities and get the volumes, and the bank has the capital, right? And when you join hands together, we can create magic, right? So now coming to the public credit registry, I think if you ask me, this can be a very, very big game changer. And if a public credit registry or a PCR can be institutionalized, it can be hugely beneficial because it can show the entire history of all the financial transactions. So how does it work? So essentially, there are two core elements to it. First is the core credit information, which comes from the banks and the NBFCs and the lenders in the system, right? And then there is a huge amount of secondary information which can be utilized in the entire credit decision making process. So whether it is information from the GST portal, whether it is tax information, whether it is the willful defaulter list, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, company information, securitization transaction information, right? So when you combine all this, and this is institutionalized and is owned by the central bank, you can really change the entire credit decision making process. It can serve as a single point reference for all the credit transactions, and it can actually address the information asymmetry in the system. And when you have all kinds of data, like alternate data, like utility bill payments, income tax payments, GST, even the smaller and the unregistered borrowers of the micro creditors who still don't have any access to credit and don't have any prior track record will be able to come into the ambit of the formal credit market, right? But the challenge really is twofold. I think the first challenge is that how do we address privacy and confidentiality constraints, right? Because a lot of this data tends to be in the private domain, right? And the second, of course, is the challenge which is always there in India, which is that of implementation, right? So when you want to implement this, I think the basic thing that you want is the readiness from the part of the banking system. By readiness, I mean whether it is the API tools or it is their compatibility readiness with different kinds of platforms and structures. After all, you've got to manage enormous amounts of data, right? So that is the operational challenge.
Right. I think, and in some cases, the banks would also consider some of these data as their proprietary data, and maybe not want to part with it. But that's a different talk altogether. So, Aishwarya, coming to you, a harmonious collaboration between fintech firms and banks. How much of that is already happening, and what is the opportunity for the future?
So NBFCs, fintechs like us, we found a way to reach the last mile distribution. We are actually present on ground, and we also have the technology to back it. So we are able to reach these customers. But at the end of the day, to finance them, we need money from banks. So that's where the challenge is. Credit has opened up to the segment, but not quite a lot, because repeatedly, I think even in this conversation, the biggest debate was how can collateral-free lending be, expanded? Will it be enough? Will without collateral make sense? So I think even within this group, there was hesitancy in terms of understanding collateral-free lending, and that extends to banks as well, right? And which brings me back to my earlier point on how banks or the traditional financial institutions partake of in the current segment of financial inclusion, right? And although in the last about 3 to 4 years, the credit has increased to the segment organically or inorganically through us NBFCs, I think there's a lot of still space which is yet to be covered, because predominantly the space has opened up. Other bigger NBFCs and other financial institutions are trying to address the same gap. In fact, we talked about co-lending. We are actual practitioners of co-lending. We've been doing this for the last 3 to 4 years now actively, but with NBFC partners and hopefully with banks in the next few months. But having said that, it's taken us a long time to sort of understand the operational difficulties of actually operationalizing a co-lending, right? There's a lot of factors which goes into how an NBFC operates and how our banks are required to operate. And hence, you know, the meeting of the minds there becomes more of an issue. But if that can be unlocked, if that potential can be unlocked, I think there would be a significant credit flow to all of these MSMEs who, let's face it, are being reached only by the front end NBFCs and not by the banks, because they cannot have reach everywhere. They are doing their job. They are doing the job where they are charted out to be, but then reaching these guys, the MSME guys who are in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, I think it's still a long way away unless there is a holy partnership between the NBFCs and the banks in that order. Direct assignment, I think Sudeepji mentioned that direct assignment has been popular, but again, as an NBFC, there are challenges on selling off the books because a lot of other restrictions are out there. So in terms of growing this to the next level, I think co-lending and other sort of partnerships or even on lending to such NBFCs who focus on the MSMEs is very, very important. Just to give you an example, there were these TLTROs and other schemes which the government sort of introduced. They were great schemes, but very little came through to the last mile distributed NBFCs, right? So there was not a lot which we could partake out of, although the scheme was open. So the accessibility of these schemes should be made more so that it can reach the correct target audience is my submission here. Although a lot of work has been done in this, I think more policy guidance, more support from RBI is required for a bank and an NBFC sort of journey so that we can tap into all of the target segment which is still waiting out there for money.
So co-lending with banks, I think, Ashwarya, you need to compare notes with all of them. So we are running out of time. So last question, which would probably be the same for everyone, is according to you, personally, if you had to answer this question, what can be some of the innovative and new ways that can make funding for MSMEs easier? Starting with you, Rajiv.
Thanks. We've been interacting a lot with RBI, and at least in my tenure, and they've been hearing us patiently. But two things which came to our mind, and as a chamber, was one is basically a credit insurance. Now this has already started, and but this needs to be scaled up. I think need is to work on a portfolio approach like a cluster, because individual risks are much more for default compared to a cluster risk. So if we are trying to work in the chamber through a formula which could be, I know the mechanism has to be devised so that which NBFC will have more risk cover, etc., and payments, but we are trying to work on that because that would help the banks to lend more freely to especially the smaller MSMEs. The other thing is, this is more related to the interest part and then bring some capital for the banks so they can lend more. Is, today exports are growing, MSMEs or anybody is exporting, they have to take the ECGC cover. ECGC is rated at AAA, but the banks do not allocate funds as per that rating. They allocate it as per the rating of the MSME. So that, they should do a credit enhancement. I do understand the ECGC does not give 100% cover. It could give 80%, 60%, 70%, but whatever it is, the MSMEs today are, generally in the B2BB or B categories. So if we can work on a credit enhancement, this will help reduce the rate of lending. Also, it will help the banks to free more capital to lend to the MSMEs. So these are two thoughts of mine.
Great. Thank you, Rajiv. Saurav, to you.
Yep. When we are trying to address the MSME lending issues or the challenges, I think I like to call it that this is a trinity. There are three key aspects which need to be looked at together, which is the challenges faced by lenders, challenges faced by the borrower, and the ecosystem. And we have discussed all the three in our discussions from various panelists. They have had views on that. And these three need to evolve and work together to make the outcome for MSME, so make the credit more accessible and cheaper. Any lender from a bank's point of view will evolve with the advancements of the information provided by the bureau, like Mr. Surul. The bureau is now providing extremely good information on the industry insights, on the customer insights, on the markets, on the geographies, and that is one important part. Plus, as we grow on as the digital journey progresses for the MSMEs and they adopt and accept, the digital way, which is your eKYCs and things like your Udyog Aadhaar and Udyog registration, right? Once they adapt to all these things, I think the data would be extremely good, and the decision making will become very, very easy, and we will be able to see higher credit going. But some of the suggestions, I think the SME Exchange is a very interesting thing. The TReDS is a very beautiful platform. Of course, it will take time for us to see results. One very interesting aspect that I have been seeing taking, slowly growing is the peer-to-peer lending, right? So this peer-to-peer lending has been always a traditional part. So what we used to call the money lender nexus, or but here the only difference is that it is the buyer-supplier lending to each other by way of credits or even by way of cash. So that's very interesting. So if the cost of funds can be reduced on this peer-to-peer platforms and some of these platforms, I think that will be brilliant for the MSMEs.
Right. Sudeep, your views?
Yeah, so I think we've discussed today a lot of solutions, right? And if I were to just simply put it, I think digital lending and using technology to in your credit decision-making system, I think that is really the key. Because if you look at it, in the ecosystem, the other stuff is already there. By other stuff, I mean the government has come out with various schemes which enable financial institutions and banks to refinance, right? So what it means is that the recycling of that credit has been enabled, right? But the banks need to change their way of looking at a credit from a collateral focused to a mix of collateral and cash flow based on technology, right? Based on as Saurav was putting it very nicely, the digital footprint that is increasingly getting created in the system, right? So how do you do that? Maybe you need a PCR for that. You may need something else, right? But I think before anything, we need to have a different sort of a mindset and focus away from collateral based to a mix of cash flow and collateral.
Ashara, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there are two key things which I would want the lending space to look at in the next couple of years at least. One is a lot of policies and a lot of things, the government related things like TReDS, etc., are there. How do we sort of harness that and use it better? I think that becomes important. I mean, there's a lot of such great initiatives out there, including a marketplace for MSMEs. Not many know about this, but trying to help use all of these in the right aspect, I think that's our first prerogative, because having new things is great, but then we are having a set of things. How do we sort of use it to the advantage of the MSMEs we are trying to target on is more important. And also there is this micro equity idea, which is taking shape in many of these high growth MSME population. How can it be downgraded to the micro level borrowers so that we can, get an early stage to these MSME customers, engage with them, and then, take them to the next level. After all, MSMEs contribute almost, I think, 40% of our GDP. And come on, if you don't invest in them right now through such ventures, then who else, right? So how do we sort of harness their capacity of growth at such an early age is something, as an ecosystem we all need to think about. And last but not the least, we are servicing the MSMEs. How can we look at NBFCs like us differently in terms of credit assessment? Something of what Sudeep ji said, in terms of how do we rate this differently? How do we rate the MSMEs differently? Because MSMEs are a different ball game. You cannot compare them to your normal private companies or others, right? You need to have a different standard of application for such MSMEs. How do we standardize them differently and then compare them among their peer group is something which is still evolving, not very standardized yet, which I think in the next couple of years we should try together to do that, because they do deserve a separate page in all of the different reports. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you. So funding clearly is a huge issue, and it is clear that we need an innovative approach. Here's hoping that stakeholders can bridge the large funding needs of the sector. The series is a part of the webinar for ET Rise Top MSMEs ranking. So if you think you are one of India's top performing private companies, please nominate yourself. Before we end, a big thank you to our sponsors, Cell Global Partner, eBay Banking Partner, Deutsche Bank State Partner, MIDC, and assessment partner, Care Advisory. But a huge thank you to our speakers, Aishwarya Ravi, Sudeep Sural, Saurav Sharma, and Rajiv Podar for joining us today. Thank you so much.